What you are about to hear is not just a story about lights in the sky. It is a story about a quiet valley in Norway, a place surrounded by mountains, forests, and silence so deep it feels untouched by time. But in this silence, something extraordinary happens. Something that appears without warning, moves without sound, and disappears without explanation. This phenomenon is known as Hessdalen Lights, and even today, despite decades of observation, it remains one of the most persistent, unsolved mysteries in modern science. To understand it, we must first go to Hessdalen Valley, a remote region in central Norway. Small population, minimal light pollution, long winter nights that stretch endlessly into darkness. A perfect stage for something unusual to reveal itself. The first reports did not come from scientists. They came from local residents. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, people living in the valley began reporting strange lights in the night sky. At first, they were dismissed. Simple explanations were suggested. Car headlights, distant aircraft, atmospheric reflections, even natural optical illusions. But the reports kept coming, and they became more detailed, more consistent, and harder to ignore. The lights were not static. They moved. They changed shape. They changed color, sometimes appearing as glowing spheres, sometimes elongated beams, sometimes hovering motionless in the air, and sometimes moving at incredible speed across the valley. White, yellow, red, blue. The colors shifted unpredictably, as if the light itself had no fixed identity. At first, scientists were skeptical, but curiosity eventually replaced doubt, and soon researchers arrived in Hessdalen. They brought cameras, radar systems, magnetic field sensors, optical equipment. The goal was simple: capture and explain the phenomenon scientifically. But what they found only deepened the mystery. The lights were real. They were recorded on film. They were detected on radar. They were measured by instruments. This was no illusion. Hessdalen Lights existed as a measurable phenomenon. But the question remained: what exactly were they? The recordings showed luminous objects moving through the valley, sometimes slow and steady, sometimes sudden and unpredictable, sometimes hovering as if observing the ground below, and sometimes accelerating in ways that defied conventional aerodynamics. No sound, no heat signature that matched known aircraft behavior, no clear physical explanation. Scientists began proposing theories. The first major idea was plasma-based phenomena. Perhaps ionized gases in the atmosphere were forming stable, glowing structures. Plasma that could appear and move under specific environmental conditions. But the problem was stability. Plasma in normal atmospheric conditions is usually unstable and short-lived, yet these lights persisted. Another theory suggested piezoelectric effects. The geology of the valley could be under stress. When certain rocks are compressed, they generate electrical charges. Those charges could ionize air particles and create light. But this still did not fully explain the movement patterns. Another hypothesis involved combustion of dust or metallic particles. Iron-rich soil in the region could react with oxygen in the air, creating glowing effects. But again, the observed behavior did not consistently match combustion physics, and so every explanation solved part of the mystery while creating new contradictions. In the 1990s, a major scientific effort was launched, Project Hessdalen, one of the most serious attempts ever made to study an unexplained atmospheric phenomenon. Automated cameras were installed across the valley. Radar stations operated continuously. Magnetic field detectors monitored fluctuations.
Spectrometers analyzed light composition. The valley became an open-air laboratory. And the phenomenon did not stop. It continued to appear, night after night, year after year, and it was recorded again and again. Hessdalen Lights was no longer just anecdotal. It was documented, measured, tracked, yet still not explained. Some radar readings showed objects with defined positions in space,
but without consistent physical mass signatures, as if something was there, but not fully there in the traditional sense of physical matter. This created new questions. Was it energy? Was it plasma? Was it a rare atmospheric interaction? Or something entirely unknown? Even with modern instrumentation, the data refused to converge into a single explanation. Meanwhile, the local people continued living with the phenomenon. For them, the lights were not a scientific puzzle. They were part of life, something seen occasionally in the long winter nights, sometimes feared, sometimes ignored, sometimes simply accepted as part of the valley's identity, but always mysterious, never fully understood. Over time, more advanced technology was introduced: infrared cameras, high-resolution spectral imaging, improved radar sensitivity, continuous automated monitoring systems. And yet the pattern remained unchanged. The phenomenon appeared and defied complete explanation. Some modern scientists suggest a combination of factors: low-energy plasma interactions, geological electrical activity, rare atmospheric optical conditions, magnetic field fluctuations, a complex mixture of natural processes that only occur under very specific conditions. But none of these theories fully account for all observed behavior, and so the mystery remains open. Unlike many scientific problems that eventually find resolution, Hessdalen does something unusual. It resists closure. It refuses to settle into a single explanation. It exists in the gap between known physics and unknown possibilities. And perhaps that is why it continues to fascinate researchers and observers alike. Because it reminds us of something important. Even in a world mapped by satellites and measured by instruments, there are still phenomena that do not fit neatly into our understanding. Hessdalen Lights still appears in the valley today, sometimes frequently, sometimes rarely, sometimes brightly, sometimes faintly, always unpredictably. And every time it appears, it reopens the same question. What are we really seeing? A natural phenomenon not yet understood? A rare atmospheric interaction? Or something still beyond the reach of current science? In a world that constantly seeks answers, Hessdalen offers none that are final. Only observations, only possibilities, only questions. And perhaps that is why it endures. Because as long as it remains unexplained, it remains alive. In the silent valley of Hessdalen, under the cold Norwegian sky, the lights continue to appear, and humanity continues to watch, waiting, learning, and wondering.